happy Juneteenth when you guys are watching this. Hope everyone is having a good week. It is a beautiful, today is a Wednesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday. It is a beautiful Wednesday. I had to think about it for a second. It is a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I am mostly staying home today. I know there's like a million and one like New York events going on, but I decided to stay home today, get some work done, clean up around my room. I'm gonna go with my mom later to my eyebrows. I'm gonna go with my mom later to a poetry show at the Lincoln Center, so that should be pretty fun. There's actually a meetup there tonight in the group that I'm in to go to like a comedy festival, but it's okay. Always next time. Time with my mom is much more important. I can see my friends every day. And so the reason why I'm here today is because I wanted to sort of like finish off where we left off with part 1 of my spiritual journey video with like a few updates with what's happening today in life. And so I remember I was up to the part where I was talking about what happened with my last, like what sort of led me into like becoming a paraprofessional. And so excuse me. I'm so sorry. Oh, thank God you could edit stuff out. Oh my God. Sorry about that. Hold on 1 second. Hey yo, sorry about that. I had a wicked cough out of nowhere. I don't know what that was. But I was talking and then something just, oh my God, I couldn't breathe for a second. Okay, where we left off. Okay, so I remember we were talking about what had led me to get my paraprofessional job. And so I was working, like I said, I was working in fast food for maybe about a decade. And I always felt like it was a job that I sort of did and stayed in for so long because it was easy in a sense. I always found my jobs on like Craigslist, which is not the most reputable source for you to get your jobs and source of income. But it worked for me, and Indeed and LinkedIn and all those other, I guess, like known professional websites, they never really worked for me and they never answered my resume. And so I mostly was always looking at Craigslist because it was like an immediate response and I could just send my resume in an email and then they can decide if they wanted me to come in or not. And I would just get like my resume printed or something and head to the place. And so I remember I was working in fast food for about 10 years. And I was working this is about a time, before I entered this field, this is about a time where I was still working at like this vegan restaurant in Manhattan. And, you work in a certain area for a certain time and you realize that you have to do like a lot of people's jobs. Like when you work in like the fast food industry, or I guess what you call like a low income sort of profession, you find yourself having to be like 8 different people at once. So I was always like the cashier, or I was helping to book tables. I was like helping with like serving food. I was doing customer service. I was doing like a lot of different jobs at once. And I kind of after a while kind of felt like I was very like overworked, but I wasn't like appreciated for my work in a sense. And girl, don't get me wrong, like I worked with amazing people who always kept me laughing, that always like we always helped each other to like get through the day in a sense. But after a while, you kind of do want more for yourself, Like you came to America, I didn't come to America, I was born here. But like, you work hard and you sort of like envision your life a different way than what it is now. And you know that there's more when it comes to life, in a sense, is what I'm saying. And so I kind of just felt like it was time for a change for a while, but I never like pushed myself to be able to find a different job or take that leap of faith toward a different field and actually get a job in my degree. Because I don't know if I mentioned it in my first video, but I was actually using my bachelor's degree in psychology when I was at Baruch. And I was working for like PhD students who are like trying to fulfill their, PhD in psychology program so they can be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And I was helping like students take like online surveys so they can get like points toward their classes and stuff like that, their psychology classes. So I actually was using my degree in my field before like COVID happened and everything, and we had to basically be online. And so I remember like I had some very, like I said, I had some very motivating coworkers who were always like encouraging me to leave the job. They were like, why are you, you have a degree, you went to school, why is it that you're working here? This job isn't meant for people like that. It's meant for people who work like 80, 90 hours a week and they don't have their papers. They can barely speak English, so they have no choice but to work these types of jobs. But you who actually have a degree, why is it that you're not like basically using your full potential? And so that's what sort of gave me the push that I needed. And I remember I was applying, I was mostly finding like paraprofessional jobs. And that's how I found out about iHope, which is a school that's located in Manhattan that I work at now. And so I remember telling my boss what was happening, and I was just like, I kind of just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere and I wasn't happy anymore. And I was working so hard and having to deal with all these different like customers and personalities and attitudes and feeling like all this entitlement was towards me. And just, it was affecting my mental, it was affecting my spiritual. And I was just like, I sort of just need to like move on and transition and see what else is out there for me. And he was very understanding, my boss. And I'll never forget that. And I've actually been meaning to visit that place for a while and see how everyone's been, but like I've just always been so tired. But one of these days I'm gonna drag one of my friends to go with me to visit them and see how they've been and catch up, because it'd be really nice to see them again. And so I'm on now. I've applied to iHope, and I'm having my interview, and I looked crazy. And I don't know what I was going through my mind that day, but I just remember like being so passionate. Even like after I quit, the job working at the vegan restaurant, and I tried the first paraprofessional job because I was very new to the field. I was very inexperienced, and I felt like I was always doing something wrong. And I had got let go from that job after a month. And so after that, I was really depressed because I kind of felt like I was kind of just thrown into an environment without really knowing what was happening. And I never really felt comfortable in my classroom or like around the teachers I was working with. And it was just always something going on. I didn't really like connect with my student like that. And I kind of just made the best with what I could, but it was always just a very frustrating challenge, I remember. And after I got let go from that job after only like a month, I was really depressed for a while because I felt like here I am, like I finally went towards something and I took a chance, and I sort of just got dropped with no warning. Like they let me go at the end of the day, I remember. They had me complete my whole day and then fired me at the end. And so after that job, I was very hesitant to now apply to iHope and try again in a sense. But I kind of knew that just because something doesn't work out the way that sometimes when a door closes and something doesn't work out the way that you plan, it's because you were meant to go towards something else. And that's something that I had to learn in my journey. And it doesn't reflect on you as a person, but you also have to know that like certain things have consequences. And you can't necessarily like make up rules or do things because you want to do things a certain way or because you don't feel comfortable around certain people. That means that you sort of like bring negative energy or whatever the case is. You have to learn to sort of like work with people, but also just sort of have a sense of discernment. And that's something that I learned. And so now at my interview, at my second attempt at a paraprofessional job, I was a bit hesitant, but they could tell that I was passionate and I did learn a lot from that first job. And watching the kids grow and really helping them learn new skills and everything, that is what motivated me to stay in the field. And they saw that, and I was hired. And I remember, like, I wasn't being paid for like about a month, because they say it in the interview and in the contract that you're not paid for about a month. And it was really hard. And at first I thought, wait, is this a scam? Like, I've never heard of a job that didn't pay you for a month. And so I was wondering, like, how I was gonna be able to, like, sort of get through the month, just kind of spending. I already didn't really have any money, and now I'm spending more money to be able to eat and get through the day while I'm working here for the first time. And I just remember just always, like, just thanking the universe for even getting me the job, because it's something that, like, I manifested for a while, being able to get the job and being able to gain some better experience in the field with, like, better training and, like, a healthier environment. And so I was able to make it through the month. And I remember, like, when I had first met my kid, he was so shy. He was like a Muslim guy, or Arabic, whatever you would prefer it as. And he had to be like maybe like 14 or 15 years old. And I remember he couldn't even like look me in the eye. But over the year, we had just gained like such a love for each other, like such a bond. Like, this kid like couldn't even go through his therapies without me after a while. Like, he was always looking for me and always calling me to come over so that I could play with him and I could be involved in everything. And him and I ended up like getting really attached to each other. And so, like I said, this is like my sort of, I've worked in fast food for about 10 years, and now I'm in like my first corporate environment. And it was a lot to take in, especially from someone coming from a background where it's like we were all empathetic. We may have came from different ages and backgrounds and upbringings and whatever the case is, but we always just knew that we were all just trying to make it through the day. We're all just trying to pay our bills and survive, and we have love for each other and we have respect for each other. And if we had a problem with each other, like, we kind of just talked it out. And so it was different for me when I'm now in a corporate environment, being around, special needs kids with like brain-based disorders and cerebral palsy and autism, blindness, deafness, things, the population that you don't really think about on an everyday basis. I'm working with them, and I'm working in a guidance, I'm working in a, in an environment where my directors and supervisors and the bosses of my teachers and the bosses' bosses are all on the same floor. And I kind of felt like after a while I was like constantly being watched, or like people didn't feel like they could like talk to me. They felt like I wouldn't maybe be receptive to their information or their criticism. So they would always like sort of go above me. Or I wasn't really told properly how to, like, to the best of my ability, take care of a kid, but I would get in trouble because I didn't take care of the kid to the best that I could when I wasn't really given that information to do what I needed to do in the first place. It was a setup. And so I just found myself going through these constant, just miscommunications with people, or people not feeling like they could talk to me about certain things. And I just always, again, it's kind of like where I felt like I was at the job before this one, the first paraprofessional job, where I felt like I was sort of being watched in a sense to fail, but I wasn't given the proper tools to be able to succeed. And I found myself having like anxiety coming to work, in a sense. Anxiety coming to work and like feeling anxious and feeling like, well, I'm gonna mess up today somehow, or someone's gonna like come to my head power in the classroom and tell them that they have a problem with me, or they didn't like what I said about this, or they didn't like what I said about that, or that I offended them in some way. And I kind of felt like the personality that I had and like the light that I had and me feeling like I could be myself, it kind of went away, like the more situations that kept happening. And about 2 years later, on my second student, and now a lot more experience in the fields, a lot older, like, physically, but also like mentally and everything, and taking the wisdom that I have from different people my age who have been there a lot longer than me, or older, whatever the case is, or, even from my boss myself. I had to learn that at the end of the day, I have to have a situation. I have a situation. I have a job. And I have to know how to do that job properly. And I do know how to do that job properly. And I have to sort of learn, in a sense, to stop second guess myself and to not give people something to talk about, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, if you know that you're a good employee, if you know that you work hard at what you do, and you know that you're experienced in what you do, then there's no room for people to be able to say anything about you. And if they do, it's just understand with discernment and your intuition, like if it's coming from a good place, in a sense. Because a lot of people, I sort of had to realize at the job that when a person like really cares about you and they want to see you grow and they do want you to be successful at a job, no matter how you may feel about like the company or its system or the way they treat its workers, for you to be like successful at a job, you have to be able to accept criticism from people. And most of the time, like when the people that I was speaking to, they really did come from a good place, of a place of just wanting me to be able to do the job properly and not feeling like everyone was against me. Because they were telling me things basically because that they care. And they don't want to always see me in trouble, and they don't want me to feel like I'm sad working at the job, you know? Or I feel like I have to like tuck myself away in a corner so that I don't disturb anything or feel like I'm getting in the way of something. Or that if I move or like if I be myself or if I share my opinions, I'm going to get in trouble or I'm going to be, punished for something. Just sort of learn to think before you speak. And that's something that I've definitely improved on this year with like therapy and everything, which I will talk about in part 3 of my video. Like therapy, how I ended up getting into therapy, my spiritual retreat in North Carolina, and how that sort of like led me into sort of reevaluating my friendship circle and like the people that I have around me, the people that I had around me, and the people that I have around me now. And so, like I said, now that I've been at this job for about maybe 2 years now, my spirituality has definitely come into play many times where I kind of felt like I had to have this shield around me, because it wasn't even just feeling like I was constantly being watched by corporate or, always getting into trouble for something. Like I mentioned, it was the miscommunication with different people who I felt like kind of prejudged me based on like what they maybe saw in the hallways instead of like actually taking the time to speak to me as a person. It was me trying to learn to bond with this whole different student after the relationship that I had with my first one. A kid who has all these emotional problems and all these medical things that I wasn't used to before. And me trying to connect with his mother to try and get like the best proper care for him or to learn more about him so that I could take care of him properly. And me feeling like I was getting like adversity constantly because I wasn't who his regular para is, when it's like, just how this is new for you, this is new for me too. And I felt like we could never like come to that understanding. And so over time, I've definitely learned it's okay to be yourself, but also like be vulnerable. Be vulnerable about yourself, your flaws, and what you feel like you can improve on, but also when you need help. I've always been a person that's been very hyper independent and didn't want to feel like I was always bothering someone for help or like if I was a burden on people. But I had to learn that in this field, you definitely will need some help sometimes, and that's okay. If anything, it makes you stronger, showing that, hey, like, I don't know everything, or sometimes I do feel like I didn't handle this situation properly. What would you have done? Because it shows that you're always willing to grow, and if you're not learning, then you're basically dead. And so that's my story about how I ended up sort of in the paraprofessional field and what sort of made me take a leap of faith, and also going through these experiences, what had finally made me, in part 3, we'll finally talk about what had made me transition from that into taking a spiritual retreat to North Carolina to visit my friend, and then how that sort of led me into getting into therapy for the first time. And in that video, I also give like a snippet to where it's a separate video that I want to make about Black people, especially us, Black women especially, and our journey with therapy and how that might be scary for some, but it is very beneficial. Hope you guys have a very happy Juneteenth, and I will see you guys in part 3.